Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlog Banter, where us four Backlog boys look at every single Best Picture winner in random order and try to rank them all against each other on a great big list of the best pictures. It's the Quest for the Bestest. My name is Timo, of course joined by Tucker, Tanner, and Abram. We're all here for a very special episode. We are talking about the 2000 movie Gladiator, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix, and some other names that you maybe have heard of, you maybe not have. I want to talk about this film. I just watched it. I finished it a couple seconds before we started recording. And then, I've got it's all right here. It's all stored in my brain. I think we're going to have, today we're entering the gladiatorial arena, not in bloodsport, but in mind sport. We're going to compete with our ability to debate and deliberate the faults and the merits of this film, if you think there are either of those, which we shall see. But after a little bit
Most
of housekeeping,
movies have one or the other.
one or the other, yes.
Most movies have both, actually.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, enough of that tomfoolery. Yeah. Last week, we talked about a film that none of us liked very much, but we had a great time discussing. It was Around the World in 80 Days from 1956. We gave it an average score of 2.3. That's pretty dang low. So it put it at the number 70th spot on our list. If you want to find out exactly why we thought that movie sucked so much, go check out last week's review. It'll surely put a grin on your face and a chuckle in your belly. I had a great time talking about that film, but maybe we'll have a better time with this one, because I think maybe the faults v merits category weighs out a little bit better. We'll see. After we get to hear a featured comment, because the Quest commenters have returned. They're not slacking off this week. Thank God.
They're not. No, of course, we've got the return of both John Tour and Dan's, but we're going to be focusing on Dan's comment this week because it's a little bit longer and I think a little more interesting. Sorry, John Tour. Dan says, I also had not seen On the Waterfront. Oh, well, he's commenting about he's like, all right, it's a whole thing. We'll figure it out. All right, we're just going to go through this. I also had not seen On the Waterfront. Not a huge fan of mob and boxing. I have seen Around the World in 80 Days 3 times. The first, back in the 70s, I thought it was good. The second time, in the 90s, it was just okay. The third time, several years ago, I thought it was awful for all the reasons you discussed. There is one issue that none of you quite brought up. In the early mid-50s, television was pulling huge amount of people from going to the movies, so Hollywood began producing super widescreen spectaculars that you just could not see on the home little screen. While many of these movies were actually good movies, this one was just a travelogue. That's why there are long, lingering shots of scenery. The issue you mentioned about people having access to video of world locations also helped propel this to huge success. I think this is one of the many, and certainly one of the biggest, films to age extremely poorly. Absolutely agree on all of that. Not a controversial comment at all.
No.
Aged like milk.
Yes.
Milk in the hot southern heat over a span of a couple months, perhaps.
That's what I have in this jug right here.
Around 80 days, I would say.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Very nice. Okay, well, let's put that film, good riddance. Let's get rid of that thing. We're never going to talk about it again. Let's talk about Gladiator instead. What did you guys think? It's a Ridley Scott movie. We got some Ridley Scott heads in-house here. I'm looking at a man with a poster up there of a Ridley Scott movie.
Oh, yeah. That's a great point.
Sure.
Fantastic point.
Who wants to go first and enter the arena?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I think this movie is awesome. I think Gladiator is fantastic. I hadn't seen it before. This, to me, kind of falls into the heat category of movies I feel like I should have just seen for my own personal enjoyment off show, I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's pretty damn up there. I was really impressed by the scope of the film. I was really impressed by the emotion they got out of the narrative, which I didn't quite expect. I think that Russell Crowe v. Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic to watch play out. And when you get into those action sequences, goddamn, Ridley Scott, when he's not doing the editing that makes me dizzy, like at the beginning of the film, as I like to talk about, when we're just watching dudes in a gladiatorial arena, it's so, you feel it. They're really smart about what they show and how visceral the violence is and how they cut and move. There's a lot of weight to the film, and I think that contrasts nicely against the more quieter, talky dialogue sequences as we're kind of weaseling about in the hallways of Rome, figuring out the politics of the time. I think it could handle that element a little bit stronger, but nonetheless, I think that as an experience, the experience of Gladiator is, I think, phenomenal.
Okay. Who dares challenge Abram?
I'll challenge him a little bit on this because I agree. I think Gladiator is a very good movie. I think that it is an epic on a surprisingly personal scale. There's not the hundreds and thousands of characters that we're used to. And of course, there's lots of extras, people in the background, but focusing on just a small handful of characters for a 2.5+ hour movie, I think gives it a interesting balance between scope and personal experience. But on that note, I think that it is maybe a little too simple for my liking. I think that it is a very interesting narrative, but it's a pretty basic revenge narrative. It's almost cartoonish in how good versus evil it is, and how, in my opinion, a lot of the characters come off as not one note but close to it. And so, because of that, I never felt like I was able to get completely emotionally invested in it because I don't really feel like these are real people. I feel like they're amalgamations of ideas of characters. And because of that, I enjoyed it for its spectacle and the production value and its epic quality and the acting. But when it comes to the characters, I really don't know if there's much to grab onto. And also with thematics, I think it's a little bit weak. But still, overall, Abram's right. The experience of Gladiator is what it is going for. It is those action sequences. It is the scope. It is the production design, and that's where it rocks everyone's socks off. So I still do think this is a very good movie on the whole, but I think that there's certainly stuff that holds it back from greatness.
Okay. Tanner, do you want to go or do you want to toss the ball over to me?
I'll toss the
discus?
sword in your direction.
Ah.
No, there you go. The discus. That's good too.
Don't disc guy in this movie.
Good point.
Yeah, one for the fault category.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
we're gonna roll with the the merits and faults the whole time. No, I'm in the same boat as both of you guys. I like this movie. I think the experience. I think it is a badass movie with some heart to it. The film opened, and that first battle sequence, as dizzying as it is, I was like, oh, I'm in for a treat for this because this is awesome. I mean, there's like not a lot of other ways to describe it. Just like it's like this is how you start a movie. And as soon as that rolled in, and we start building their characters, and I find myself really feeling for Russell Crowe and wanting to see him succeed and following along. And while I sort of agree, Tucker, that yeah, it's a little simplistic in our thematic material, I think our characters are pretty strong. And because we have these two dueling figures that are very well acted, that we get to see a lot of not only just their battle between each other, but sort of their reasonings for why they think how they think and believe what they do, all kind of centering around Marcus Aurelius, your philosopher, emperor, stoic king. I enjoyed it a lot. The battle sequences, so much fun. I really felt like I was sitting in the Coliseum stands being like, yeah, kill, watching and I was like, is this film actually trying to say something about my thirst for blood sport? Perhaps. It made me feel like I was there watching it in real life. And I was like, I just kept thinking back to Ben-Hur, and I was like, this is a modern Ben-Hur without all that biblical, nonsense, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a plus in my category. A little bit. I think it's okay in Ben-Hur. I think it works fine in that movie. But this one, man, I was just really in on the whole Roman aspect. I feel like we don't get a ton of movies that are this well done and set in that time, or at least receive the accolades that a Best Picture winner does. So I enjoyed it. It was a great time.
Yeah, only about 90 or so movies have received that level of accolades.
Yeah.
That's an approximation.
The audience will know. They would have read it at the beginning of the episode if they're watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
Gladiator? Meh. I mean, honestly, I don't know what it is about Gladiator, but it just didn't grab me. I don't really know what to. I won't be saying any overtly negative things in this review, but I feel like I won't be saying anything overtly positive either. It just kind of struck me at a lukewarm sort of temperature while I was watching this movie. It's I think Russell Crowe is fine. He's not outstanding or anything. I think the performance wise, I think the standout here is Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
But even if we're looking at things like production design and stuff like that, we're in the year 2000. We're in the 21st century, baby. And I was sitting there like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see where they're doing some things. They're pulling out some stops here, but it's nothing that like wowed me. And in some cases, like there was a very interesting creative decision they took here with using the establishing shots of Rome and things like that. They were very they were very like grayscale, very grayscale shots of Rome. Wasn't a lot of color there. And they weren't like, realistic, recreations of the city at the time. It was sort of like this, like an artist rendering almost. And that just really didn't work for me either. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even like the action sequences, I felt, Abram, you mentioned that what the scene at the beginning felt a little jarring and whip panty and what's going on. I felt that for a lot of the action sequences. I have a note in my notes on my phone that says the action sequences are pretty good when I can tell what's going on, which is not super often. So yeah, I'll be interested to talk about these things as we go through them. But as it stands right now, just very very middling on Gladiator for me.
Okay. Well, should we begin with the beginning, I guess? Or where do you guys want to start on this one?
Yeah, I mean, might as well. Like, if we use that as a transition from what works about the action sequences and what doesn't, I think that what Abram, I think you might have messaged me something about slow mo last night. I'm like, I haven't seen the movie yet. I cannot comment.
Mhm.
But the first action sequence, I think, is pretty cool in terms of scope. In terms of establishing the tone of Maximus's abilities to be a commander. But you get the fight, and it's pretty cutty and pretty whippy, and then you get the aftermath of the fight, and it's just this slow motion for like a minute and a half, and I'm like, this is doing nothing for me. And I think it took a little bit of the power out of that sequence to start off the movie.
Yeah.
It's also our least favorite kind of slow mo, which is lowered frame rate
Yeah.
slow mo instead of high frame rate slow mo.
That's
So
how you know you're watching a movie made in the time span of like 1993 to 2003. Those 10
Mhm.
years was the time when that was the whole hit thing to do. I mean, it's in Lord of the Rings too. That's when I think about it. I don't know. It's a sign of the time, I guess, from filmmaking. The first scene,
Mhm.
I was drawn in by the spectacle. I think that the spectacle of setting it all up and you get all these guys chanting and the score is really pounding and you have this like very very incredibly well done production design and I can't tell. I mean in other scenes I could tell where the CGI stops and the live action begins, but this first
Yeah.
one it was really difficult for me, and I thought that while it was a little tough to feel what's going on, I think that the chaos of battle, could be an explanation for it. Although I would probably prefer clarity that communicates chaos just through intensity of action rather than me being like a little hard to follow. Because sometimes the cuts would have someone would do something and then you'd see something like the cut would on all the impacts, and that is at times I don't know. Choreography. If your choreography is really good and you really trust your choreography, you really don't want to be cutting on all the impacts and all like the killing basically because it takes the weight away of all those good, gory, bloody moments, which the film does have plenty of them.
Mhm.
Yeah, when I started the film, I thought I was gonna have to like fast forward through these action sequences or something because it literally was making me dizzy. And I think it's interesting how that style appears again in the film, but never to the extent that it does
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
that first
absolutely not.
sequence. And as a result, it kind of feels out of place. And I don't really think that there's a lot of ground to stand on to be like, oh, like thematically, narratively, it makes sense that he's got a different perception of battle when he's out in the field. No, it kind of feels like Ridley Scott and the editor were kind of just like screwing around, and this is what they came up with. And to me, that wasn't super effective. But nonetheless, I think that opening sequence still kind of communicates a lot about this film that really does work for me. It communicates very early on how charismatic Russell Crowe is, talking to his men on the horseback. Like if you're riding alone, you start to see the nice green fields. You're already in Elysium, right? You're dead. I think it establishes that camaraderie early. We see this sort of we see the violence in him, but the ways he can temper it. Like I love that moment when he gets knocked off the horse. And he's fighting. He's in the mud, and then he goes to grab somebody's shoulder to turn around and like slit their throat. And it's one of his guys, and he like smiles at him, and the camera cuts. I think there's cool moments like that that sort of characterize him through battle, which I like a lot. And I think it nicely sets up sort of very quickly who he is, why he is revered as Maximus. And so the sort of fallout from that works for me. It really is just a matter of what they did in that editing booth is nauseating, I think.
By the way, the editor of Morbius.
Oh,
That's not a
really?
joke. I just checked his filmography.
Holy,
He did some other
actually,
movies. That's just funny.
That's very funny. That's very funny. Um, yeah, I mean, Abram, you talked a little bit about Russell Crowe there, and I think he's he is our titular gladiator. He says, "My name is Gladiator" in
Does.
this film, but in fact, his name is Maximus. But Russell Crowe as this character of the Roman general Maximus. I think I sort of had a revelation about my perspective on Russell Crowe as an actor while watching this film because we also saw him in A Beautiful Mind, and while that performance is, I'll say, better than I feel his performance as Maximus is, I think that for me, I just prefer Russell Crowe when he's leaning into this. He's a big burly guy who likes palling around with dudes. Like those are my favorite parts of this movie. Like when he's hanging out with Juba or and stuff like that, and he makes a little joke about like I'm not going to tell you what I'm gonna what I would say to my wife and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
That's none of your
I
business.
like him like that,
Mhm.
and that's the reason why my favorite Russell Crowe performance is The Nice Guys.
Great
And,
movie.
yeah, exactly. But when he's going a bit more stock standard of I'm the dramatic lead here, and I've lost my wife and child, and I'm hell bent on revenge. I'm just sort of disinterested, and quite frankly, I think I'd say he's bordering on uncharismatic in this film for
Hmm.
most of it, except in those like few key moments where that I said earlier. But yeah, I mean, like building this like friendship or father son relationship between him and Marcus Aurelius. I'm like, yeah, this sort of the past relationship tension between him and Lucilla. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
even like the antagonistic relationship between him and Commodus, I felt a little bit lacking. So, sorry, Rusty. Do more comedies, I guess.
Well, I think that's interesting because I agree with you, but I don't think it's because of his performance. I think he is
Hmm.
bringing some good dramatic weight. I prefer his performance in A Beautiful Mind and also in The Nice Guys. I also
Mhm.
Great
those are both
movie.
better movies than this. But I think it for me it comes to the writing. When I
Mm.
opened my thing by saying, "Hey, these characters feel a little bit simplistic and the narrative feels lacking in nuance." That's why I don't think I get a lot of weight out of these relationships. His past with Lucilla is there, and they kiss, and I'm like, yeah, I saw that coming. His antagonistic relationship with Commodus is there because they're the ultimate good and ultimate evil, and there's
Mhm.
no nuance really in between them. So for me, it comes down to the writing of the plot and the characters that ends up with the characters not feeling like they're emotionally resonant for me. I mean, not because of the performances, because I think everyone's doing the best with what they're given, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is that like I think Russell Crowe is very good in the action sequences. I mean, he is really convincing to me that he is swinging the sword around and an expert sword fighter and really able to just kill anyone he wants to.
Yeah.
And
He's so good at fighting; it's insane.
Well, that's the Australian. No, sorry, he's not Australian. He's from New Zealand, but that's that New Zealand Aussie blood in him.
They're all gladiators.
Well,
They're
they're
killing
scrappy,
crocodiles and things like
They're
that.
All
killing
right, let's not
they're scrappy
stereotype.
folk. No, they all kill crocodiles.
All of
all of
them.
them do that. Yeah.
But I think
Sorry
that
to interrupt you.
when we get into the talky moments, I mean, I don't know. I think about like I think about Russell Crowe in Les Mis. I mean,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Russell Crowe's strong suit, I don't think is being that very heady and super emotionally resonant character. But in the couple of moments where it matters, like when his family dies and we get to see him, having all the spittle and snot, and as he like kisses the
Mhm.
wife's
Yeah,
charred feet.
it's a good moment.
Yeah,
Maybe the most powerful emotional moment in the film, I would say.
And then I think that he embodies this character archetype of just like the really like kind of closed off and very just like very, very driven warrior type that is, I feel like you see show up in these antiquity stories. And so for me, it's like Russell Crowe is striking at the hardest when he's doing battle and like when he has those couple comedic moments when he's chumming around with the other gladiators. But like those he doesn't really have a ton of confrontations with Joaquin Phoenix. He only has a couple, And
Mhm.
I think that when they're at a
They're
distance,
always talking about each other.
yeah, they are.
They are always they're living in each other's heads rent free.
Yes, even though the emperor does not have to pay rent. Um,
Truly.
Yeah, the I think when there's those distance scenes in the gladiator arena where their actions are really speaking a lot louder than the words do, and I really like those moments as to just feel what is happening and to be like, oh, he's turned my back on me, and those elements are kind of where Russell Crowe's performance stands out the most to me. I think it's good. It works for his character in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure he probably delivered dialogue in that 2.5 hours, right? Maybe, but I don't care. I don't remember.
Oh.
The way I think about it is like this is a physical performance. That's really what matters, and
Hmm.
to me, he sells it, right? Timo, I totally agree with you. Unless it was Tanner or Tucker who said it, then I agree with them instead. When he's in the arena and he's fighting, you believe it, right? And that's what is important to the character of Maximus. I mean, he is not involved in the politics. He doesn't care. Really, at best, he's like a pawn for other people's interests, whether it's like the ringleader who wants to get back into Rome. And he's like, this guy can kill a lot of dudes. He's going to get me back in the Colosseum. Or it's is his name Gracchus, who wants to
Gracchus.
yeah. It's he's like an object to the other people around him. And so I don't really care because he works. He fits the little Maximus shaped puzzle piece hole in the larger puzzle of Gladiator. He slots in perfectly because I do think he
he's
hits
gladiator
those.
shaped.
He fits those few emotional beats quite well. I like the foot sequence. I think is quite effective. But I think
That's
on
what
the
everyone's
whole,
calling it.
what I needed Maximus to do in this movie was to look big and for you to feel his presence on screen. And I think you always feel his presence on screen,
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
he's dressed up in the big animal furs and he's marching around as a general, or he's just this like in shape but sullen and disinterested slave, right? I think he plays these different archetypes very nicely. And then when he's yelling, "Oh, you're not entertained," and he's cutting dudes' heads off, like he's yelling orders as they're making like the phalanx of shields there, and it works for me. That's what he
Phalanx.
needs to do. Who cares?
Yeah.
This is a movie that understands that it's not here to be a deep political discussion of the tensions in Rome, or even really the personal struggle of Maximus, as much as it's about telling this narrative about this one moment in Roman history when this guy had a goddamn mission, right? And I
Yeah.
think that every piece of the puzzle in this film is slotted into that goal. It's about the spectacle, and I think he serves his facet of the spectacle very nicely.
Sure.
I agree. I think that is obviously his intention and the role of that character in terms of where his personality, the energy is going towards mostly. But I would have to push back a little bit because I think this movie is way more talky and about those political and personal relationships than frankly I expected. And I thought there would be more fighting and more gladiatorial sequences, which of course there are a number. I think there are plenty. There's enough. I'm not saying I needed too much more. But a lot of this movie, I think a surprisingly large amount of this movie is talking sequences, is these characters talking about their past or why they're doing this, why they're doing that, the political aspirations of not only Commodus in the way that he wants to get rid of the Senate, but then all the senators who don't want that, and then some of them kind of maybe do, but then also Maximus, I think, is a much bigger political force than maybe you were letting on in terms of he has his goal. He's working for the late Caesar, but he is driven to take down Commodus and be involved with the Senate and make sure that the messages are being delivered. He's much more of a focused force than just a burly force. And I think that in those moments of him trying to deliver lines about political insurrection and stuff like that, his character doesn't feel particularly nuanced. I'm like, he's the guy out for revenge. Yup, that's it. And I think, but that simplicity is at odds with, I think, the complexity of the role. Like he's the linchpin for all of these political and interpersonal things, but then he's a little too simple to hold that all together, I think.
I have two bits of trivia about that pertain to things we were talking about, and I'll start with the one that pertains a bit more to this this conversation around Russell Crowe's performance versus the writing. And this is pretty interesting and sort of leans into a thing that was known about Russell Crowe in this era of Hollywood, and I don't think isn't much of an issue anymore. But Russell Crowe, we talk about this and we talk about A Beautiful Mind. He was an it guy in Hollywood for a while, and he certainly let it go to his head because apparently Russell Crowe was continually unhappy with the screenplay, and he rewrote much of it to suit his own ends. He would frequently walk off set if he didn't get his way. The famous line, "And I will have my vengeance in this life or the next," he initially refused to say, telling screenwriter William Nicholson, "Your lines are garbage, but I'm the greatest actor in the world, and I can make even garbage sound good." He said the speech anyway because he was unable to ad lib anything better. And Nicholson said, in his defense, my lines probably were garbage.
Interesting.
So, yeah, just a writer who has very little confidence in his script, apparently. And Abram, to your point about Russell Crowe just being, having the physicality, he dropped 40 pounds after shooting the film The Insider, just months before starting filming this. And apparently, he lost it all, according to him, just by doing normal work on his Australian farm. So
What a guy! What a guy!
Fighting those crocodiles.
Yeah,
fighting
wrangle
the
them.
crocodiles.
No, that's
But
New
yeah,
Zealand.
the whole line about the whole line about him being unhappy with the script and being like, "I'm the greatest actor in the world. I can make these trash lines sound amazing," is quite telling, I feel.
I mean, I think he sells it. I think it's like he sells it to me when I'm watching the film. I believe what he's saying. Like not most of the time, all the time. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Abram. The film is about him being the gladiator, and the political stuff is our B plot that converges to create the climax. But ultimately, I am invested in him fighting dudes in the arena or on the battlefield. That's what I really care about.
Yeah, where I come down on it is like this to me is just like is like as big of a scale of a revenge movie as you could possibly make, right? And where I think the politics end up feeling wibbly wobbly, pardon my language, is when they don't like immediately and directly feed back into the interpersonal conflict, which I think is at the heart of the movie, and when the political stuff ends up feeling the best. Like I love the scene of I keep wanting to say Javier Bardem, but it's not who's in the fucking movie.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix has Lucius, and he's like,
Mm.
and this is what happened. Next time we sit down, my good nephew, I'm going to tell you the story about how the closest people to this emperor betrayed him, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think the plot serves itself best when like the problems with Rome are just sort of like a vehicle to make Joaquin Phoenix nervous or to motivate getting Russell Crowe out of slave jail or whatever he's in, right? It really, that I think if the movie falters anywhere is that it tries to extrapolate too much out into like these conversations about what's the deal with people wanting to watch the blood sport, or what's the deal with the like senators, like how do we feel about representative democracy? Like
Yeah,
that's when it gets to be too much. I think when everything funnels back into this just being a huge, cool, well produced, well acted, well executed revenge movie, I think it's fantastic. When we start to
Yeah.
get a little complicated, that's when I think we're losing the plot of the plot.
Yeah, I mean the thematic stuff that you were alluding to there, the stuff about like democracy and the good versus evil sort of things. I'm sure there's some sort of reading out there. This came out in 2000, so there could be some Bush era politics in there with the sort of the democracy thing thematics in there as well. I also think this film all of this is really muddy. I think as well. I think the film is trying to say something about like mass appeal and how the masses can be lulled into sort of this state of passivity by like blood sport or crude entertainment and stuff like that, and how they will relinquish their rights, their democratic voice. But ultimately, that doesn't go anywhere, and I think it's muddy from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't give this film any merits on that point, on any themes here.
Yeah, well, it's not really like the senators in this period of Roman history were representing the people whatsoever.
Well, yeah.
And the film kind of makes a point of saying,
Romanus, the SPQR, baby. They're talking about, hey, we're from the people, and then he's like, Nah,
No, you're not.
you guys just sit around and sip wine and have sex with women, probably.
Yeah. Should we talk about Joaquin
let's-
Phoenix? If we are going to dive
Let's
into
talk
the
about Joaquin Phoenix.
because he is not a shining bright light in this film because he is very dark and brooding. You know, I don't
He's a
know
black
what's
light.
yeah, he's a black light.
He's
in
a
some
black light.
Well, I'm like, what's the opposite of a light? I don't know. An off?
Off light, yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix is the easiest thumbs up for me in this movie. He is probably, when I think back on this movie in a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever, I'll be like, Joaquin Phoenix was very good in that movie, and that's what I can really say. I love the sort of cowardliness and weaseliness that he conveys in this. He's just a real creepo who wants to have sex with his sister and is like taking his nephew hostage to sort of, you know, entrap her in his sort of web here. But he's also like cowardly and he can't run Rome. Like, I think one of my favorite moments is the first time that he knows that Maximus is the gladiator that he's been cheering on this whole time. He like he like gives in to the crowd. Like, he can't stand his ground against the people, and is like and lets him live. I think that's a great moment. You can kind of see this like this fear on his face, this inability to wrangle the crowd and stand his ground and things like that. And I think he has that multiple times in the film.
Here's what I
Yeah,
would
I mean, he
say.
definitely. Oh, go ahead, Abram.
Quest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Javier Bardem is great in this movie.
Okay.
That's all I have to
All
say.
right.
No. Joaquin Phoenix really works for me because we were talking before, Tucker. You were saying about how like it just feels like we got characters who are really good and then really bad, and there's no nuance. But I happen to like movies where the characters are either really good, I can't reach it, or really bad.
Uh-huh.
Audio
I
listeners, he's pointing at a Star Wars
Leia
poster.
is really bad.
I don't think there's anything wrong with cinema of reassurance. I don't think there's anything wrong with having the good and the evil and them battle it out, right?
Yeah.
And especially when the sort of archetypes of good and evil are masked under really great performances. I think on the side of Russell Crowe, it's the physical. On the side of Joaquin Phoenix, it's the intellectual, it's the emotional. He gives such a convincing performance that I don't really need to go any deeper into his motivations or find some kind of nuance in his character, because he just sort of he's like a good kind of charisma vacuum. Like, he fucking sucks it all towards himself, right? And I think that's compelling, watching like just his face twitch or watching his body language as you know, he's seeing the Carthage battle unfold, and you know, everybody in there is supposed to be slaughtered, right?
Yeah.
And you can just see him getting a little bit madder, and these moments he has. I love the moment when he kills Marcus Aurelius. And I think that's also a really well edited scene, because it's like a will they, won't they for a moment. Is he actually going to kill him right here? Because it lingers, and his expression there, and the ways that he, in a Loki-esque manner, talking about probably the film that inspired Gladiator, the Avengers, watching him like, you know, have this come to Jesus moment with his dad. I'm like, oh my God, I've been just trying to live up to your expectation, but really just want to get you close enough to smother you in my big shirt, right? I think he sells that so well that that's what the movie is to me. I don't see a good archetype and evil archetype. I see these two really compelling actors going at each other with different appeals.
Yeah, I think that's true. That is what the movie is, and that is what it's going for. I think that for me, watching a film like this and knowing that in cultural consciousness, this is one of Scott's best movies. Obviously, it did win Best Picture. It's one of the classic early 2000s films. I think I honestly just expected there to be more nuance to these characters. So for the entire duration of the long duration of the movie, I was waiting for the thematics and the character motivations to flip on a dime, like, oh, that's why he's doing this. That's why they're defending this. That's why this is all happening. And while there are touches of that, I really feel like it feels like something's missing to me. I love these moments, like when Maximus reveals his identity. I think that might be the highlight of the movie to me. That twist moment that, frankly, I didn't think would come for another 30 minutes into the film. And he takes off the helmet. He's like, I am Maximus, and I was a leader of these troops, and I followed your father. And all that. I'm like, oh shit, okay, that's some personal, exciting moments. But his performance makes I think you're right, holds up the otherwise pretty simplistic material that he has to work with. But I also do think that he's such a compelling actor, and the performance is so compelling that I wish there was more thematics and character nuance underneath that, so that I could feel a little bit weird about their, in a good way, about their conflict, about the way why he's doing this, other than my daddy didn't love me. Like, there's a lot that falls into this movie of revenge, like jealousy, and those are the driving factors in otherwise a very well made and well acted film. I think that a stronger script and stronger thematics, it really would have allowed it to be more emotional for me. I wish that I was super emotionally invested in the politics of Rome and the success of this guy and the downfall of Commodus. But unfortunately, because I felt like, yeah, I can see exactly where this is going. He's gonna die. There's gonna be the uprising. Yada yada yada. It kind of felt like I had no real reason to be invested in the moment because I could see where it was going from a mile away.
Hmm.
I think that just because the characters like tell you why they are doing what they're doing doesn't like invalidate those reasonings. Just because
Of course.
Commodus is like he says it like you didn't love me enough, and that's why I'm gonna be evil now. And then that that's why Maximus he's like, well, you killed my family and you exiled me. I think those even though they can be simplistic, they drive the narrative in a way they push it forward nonetheless, even if they are
Of
just
course.
like kind of their little blocks of why they are like they are. If you were to, I don't know, fill out a questionnaire, I think everyone at the end of the movie could be like, could do the character motivations. And sometimes we get movies where that shit is not clear at all, and that is
Mhm.
it is it is maybe nuanced, but it is also maybe convoluted and difficult to really decipher unless you're really gonna sit there and like think about it. And for a film that has like got so much battle scenes, got so much action, and has all of this element of spectacle, I think like having it be a little bit more simplistic makes it easier to digest and easier to watch, because I'm like, oh, his dad didn't love him enough. Okay, and that's why he's gonna go, try to be the emperor and do things his way and like show that he really is powerful and he really can do it, even when he is Joaquin Phoenix character is a total coward and wants to just get rid of everyone who stands in his way just by his
Hmm.
inherited power. I
Mhm.
I see where you're coming from, but it isn't as big of an issue to me as I think it is for you guys.
Well, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's definitely fair. I think the reason why it weighs so heavily on me, and why something that Abram was mentioning earlier, that the fact that the movie does try to branch into these thematics, but absolutely does not go all the way with any of them. Like, there are scenes of senators talking, every 20 minutes or so, and I'm like, oh, where's this leading? Nowhere. Feels kind of like fluff. Feels like kind of like, yeah, we got to have some Roman politics around here. And the fact that so many of those scenes felt like fluff and felt like they were reaching for something that was never grabbed onto is why I'm like, okay, I feel like there was an intent here that they never fully came full circle on.
Yeah, Tucker. To that point, I was just looking through my notes, and I have written down the line: "The beating heart of Rome isn't the marble of the Senate; it's the sand of the Colosseum,"
It's a good
which is
line.
about which is a great line and sort of alludes to that sort of theme that never comes to fruition, like that I was kind of talking about. But I also have two bits of a Joaquin Phoenix trivia. Some more interesting on set stories. I know we always like those around here. So
Yeah.
well, actually, I'll do the short one bit first. Do you guys remember the bit where he's towards the end? Things are falling out of sorts with Commodus's whole plan, and Joaquin Phoenix apparently ad libbed the scream of the line, "Am I not merciful?" Connie Nielsen's wasn't expecting it, and her frightened reaction is genuine in that scene.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the on-set story is quite interesting. Because Joaquin Phoenix has been quite open and honest in recent years. I don't know about around this time, but in recent years about his anxiety and how that impacts his acting and also his appearances in public and stuff like that. But apparently, going into this film, Joaquin Phoenix was incredibly nervous on set. So much so that he asked Russell Crowe to rough him up before their big scene together to psych him up a little bit, get him in the moment. Uh, Russell Crowe was apparently at a loss with this. He went to Richard Harris, and apparently Russell Crowe and Richard Harris became very good friends over the course of the filming of this film. So Crowe goes to Harris, and should I try to do a New Zealand or Australian accent here?
Yes,
Why not?
of course,
Oi,
always.
mate, what are we going to do here, Skid? He's been asking me to abuse him before takes. And Harris replied, let's get him pissed. Over the course of the next several hours and several pints of Guinness, Crow and Harris relaxed their co-star. So that's a little bit of fun. Well, they just going out to a bar with Russell Crowe, Richard Harris, and Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah,
Sounds like a setup for a joke of sorts.
Yeah, it does. You imagine just walking into your local haunt and you see those fellas sitting at the bar and you're like, duh.
Yeah. Speaking of Richard Harris, though, this film has quite the stacked supporting cast. I mean, you have some of the most famous, of this era British actors of stage and screen: Oliver Reed, Richard Harris, Derek Jacobi, and I'll say it, all pretty underutilized. All of them not really living up to the potential that they have in their previous acting careers. Yeah, I don't know. It seems strange to me to get these the creme de la creme of British actors and then not give them a whole lot to do. Like Richard Harris is good as Marcus Aurelius, but he's not like a, oh my god, this is Richard Harris. He's one of the greatest British actors of all time. Yeah, that's just another thing I had is that we have these fantastic actors, but we don't really do a lot with them.
To me, they just kind of fit into their characters. Everyone just embodies who they are playing very well. And I never, even though I am looking and I'm like, yeah, it's Russell Crowe and yeah, it's Joaquin Phoenix. While I'm watching the film, I'm like, it's Maximus and it's whatever the other guy's name is. I'm not as good with Latin names as old Tucker is over here. But
that's my 7 years of taking Latin.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I've forgotten basically all of it, so don't fucking ask me anything about
it. They are just, it's immersive. They are the characters. I am like, it is Marcus Aurelius. Yes, that's right. And you do have, what's Russell Crowe's friends, who's also the slave, his name?
Juba. Proximo.
Jubo.
Oh, Juba, sorry.
Yeah, Jubo and Proximo. Both of those. I think that it just, to me, I just buy into that they are who the film says they are, and I think that their acting supports that. And it ultimately is about, Russell Crowe v. Joaquin Phoenix, and that the supporting cast is there to support that dynamic.
Speaking of Proximo, there was a scene in the original script where Commodus forced Maximus to kill Proximo. This gladiator trainer / slave driver that he grew to be friends with. But they had to do a rewrite because Oliver Reed died a month into filming. So
interesting.
They had to heavily rewrite the whole Proximo character and Proximo role in this film.
Wow.
Yeah, the side characters are interesting to me because I disagree with both of you, actually. I disagree with Tanner because I do think that their performances are what are good about these characters. Watching Djimon Hounsou and Oliver Reed and Richard Harris play these roles, I think, shows their skill quite fantastically. But I think, bringing it back to what I said at the beginning, I think that it's the simplicity of these characters that really leaves me wanting more. I'm seeing Djimon Hounsou and Russell Crowe be buddies for a handful of scenes, and that's about it. I wanted more moments of their friendship, of their bond, but it feels like we're always skipping over these bonds happening. I really wish that we'd gotten to see them, as I said, not only have these bonding moments, which they have a handful of, and I think are absolutely the best moments of them.
I like that scene when they're on the roof and they talk about the family that they've lost, or Jobu will probably never see his family again, so that's a form of loss. But I like that scene.
Yeah, I know there are a handful, but I think for me there aren't enough for me to want to this is the friendship. This is why he's fighting for these people that support him so much. Of course, he's a larger than life figure. That's why people are following him. But I wish that he was a little more personable, I guess, with the people that he was close to. And I also wish that we just got to see a little more of his humanity when it outside of I wish my family was still alive, and by subsequent the revenge of that, because I think the biggest disappointment for me was not being able to see Maximus come to fruition as a gladiator initially. Obviously, the movie's time is budgeted towards that second half when he is a popular gladiator, which I think is some of the strongest stuff in the film. But we see him win this first battle and then we cut, and it's a couple months later, and he's friends with Proximo, and they're about to go to Rome, and I'm like, huh. I feel like there's a good scene and a half in there where Proximo's like, oh shit, okay, this guy's really good. And they talk for their first time. And you can see that friendship start to bloom. And you can see him sort of realize, oh, maybe I do have a skill with this. And maybe this can take me somewhere. But they skip over moments like that. And that really left me wanting more. Even though this is a long movie, I really do think that the time budget towards action sequences, which, as I said, I think are good, or the fluff scenes, I really wish had been pared back and given more towards the character of Maximus and his friendships with the people that he is close to, that I feel like for the most part we just skip over the beginning of all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't
Oh.
agree. I don't agree at all. I think that stuck to the Proximo character. First of all, I don't need to see Maximus become the best gladiator in the arena, because we know who he is. You know, we know that he's got two weapons right here, right? He doesn't even need that sword and shield to kill anybody, right? we see him on that battle. We establish very early what his legacy is. We learn that, oh, he's been basically sweeping across Europe, just like killing people, right? In the name of Rome. There's always this sort of tacit understanding in the audience's head that when Maximus wants to turn it on in that arena, he can, and no one's going to beat him.
Mhm.
So I'm always sitting with that, and I do think that there's a great moment between him and Proximo when Proximo is like evangelizing. Damn, we're going to be in the Colosseum. You ever seen the Colosseum before? We're going to be in Rome. You know, because the emperor, the new Caesar, wants to watch all this happen. You kind of see that click in Russell Crowe's mind, and he's like, oh. You're telling me that the new emperor is going to be there, right? It's tacit, but that's not where the film is focusing, because I don't think that's where the film needs to focus. Because the film knows that we know that Maximus is a badass and that Maximus is trying to get into Rome for his own reasons. We do get that sequence that I like. But to the side characters, I agree with Timo that first off, they serve to be that side characters. They serve to be supporting roles that boost up Maximus, and we do get compelling moments out of them. I love when Maximus has revealed himself and he's getting his food, and he thinks that it's poison, and his friend goes to eat it, and he goes and pretends to be choking, like he's being poisoned instead. But they're just poking fun with him, right? And I like hearing them call him, what do they call him? Commander, whatever they call him.
General.
General, right? General. We get these moments out of these guys, and it's a simple arc, but seeing Jubo and the other friend go from just these random
By the way,
people
it's
that he's
Juba. I'm
Juba.
Okay, I might have.
I think we've been
missaid
saying.
that
I think
earlier.
we've been saying like Jobu and different other things. So yeah, Juba. Sorry.
Seeing Juba and the other guy, they go from just being random slaves there with him to being his comrades, and be like, no, you gotta get the hell out of here, Maximus. We're gonna hold the line. And we see them fighting, and we see that the tall burly guy gets sacked. He basically becomes sacrificed to let Maximus escape, which ends up not working out. It all services the plot. It services kind of the thrust of the movie, which I think speaks to the fact that the plot is really what's driving all of this, right? Because the plot here has so many great moments, and I think we ought to talk about them. I love that prison break sequence, or it's not really a prison break, but you know what I mean. They're coming to kill Maximus. They know that the plot's afoot, and then he's escaping through the tunnels, and you think he's going to get away, and then you come out and you have, what's the famous
40,000
guy?
fucking guys.
Cicero. And Cicero is hung from the neck, immediately killed, and he's surrounded, and the camera cuts. Like, goddamn, where's Maximus, right?
Yeah,
I think this film is so good about building tension and building these really exciting flashpoints throughout the narrative. Whether it's that one, whether it's the moment where he's got the MF Doom helmet on, and he goes, take off the helmet, I want to see the Gladiator. And you know, and like you turn around and damn, face to face again, right? The film funnels us through all these places, and I think it knows which beats it needs to hit and which ones it can leave to us to get us to these exciting moments faster.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I think about the exciting, the interesting moments, the moments that I'll remember, it's probably going to be a select handful of the fight sequences, which I think. But even then, I think they're just a little bit hamstrung for my liking by the editing and stuff like that. Like I like that, like, first the reenactment of the battle in the Colosseum, when all the dudes have when they're forming the phalanx, and they ramp the chariot off of one of them, and the one person gets cut in half by the spike on the wheel and stuff like that. But those like 2-second moments are sandwiched in between whip penny edited together things that I can't see or understand what's going on, so I just kind of lose interest in those moments. Or like the Tiger of Gaul scene with the undefeated Gladiator. Like, I know he's gonna win, and yeah, it's kind of cool to see Maximus like have to dodge all these tigers, and you know it's rigged from the beginning. But I don't know, there's just something about how these scenes are edited and put together in the film that that leaves me disinterested there. And then as we talked about with the performances, I'm just not that hooked by them, and I'm not that hooked by the writing and stuff like that. So
I think
yeah.
I think the whole editing thing, it is just a sign of the times. It is just how the movies were made in this late '90s, early 2000s space. Like they just did. There's a
Chaos cinema, baby.
yeah. It's
Tony
just,
Scott, Michael Bay, Ridley Scott, of course.
Mm,
and so well, I think that it's a fair criticism to say, but that if they were to make this movie again, I'm sure they wouldn't shoot it like that and they wouldn't edit
Yeah,
it like that.
mhm,
And so it's
absolutely.
just kind of like, how the film is a product of its time and it shows that through the filmmaking methods, you know. Otherwise, I think the cinematography is very beautiful. I really like a lot of the shots. You were talking at the beginning, Tanner, about the desaturated shots of the city, and those I felt like there's a couple times it uses very, very desaturated photography, I think,
mhm,
for effect. And I think it is intentional, not just like a weird one-off kind of thing. Like when we're going to Rome, it's kind of like it's a dark and not a night, not actually like a very nice place. And when he's
mhm,
then moving to Elysium after he dies in the final battle, that also uses that very, very desaturated look to kind of
mhm.
separate the real world from this vision or this imagination that he's having. And I think that the CGI, you said it looked like it was a little like, I don't know, kind of painted, or I think it is a painterly
I
quality when I know that's not the exact word that you use, but it was something along those
um
lines.
Yeah, it's just it's an artist rendition, is what I said. Like
Mhm.
there clearly is sort of like a reasoning why they did this. I don't even know how to describe it really. I don't know what kind of art style it is, but it is a very artistically inspired depiction of Rome. Like nowadays, we would just get a completely CGI, like one for one recreation of what Rome looked like in this time. But no, this time it almost seems like a hand drawn picture or painting or something
Mhm.
like that.
I
And
was looking a little while ago I'm here over in England and there's lots of museums and lots of art and all that hotty toddy stuff. I was looking at like Renaissance, not Renaissance, like Romantic era paintings. And I think that there's a very similar look to the way that like the light plays off of the clouds and comes from the sun. And,
mhm,
and, maybe isn't a reference that your like average Gladiator watcher is going to get. But I think I at least appreciated it because I was like, this, like, I don't know, reflects its own like fictitiousness in a way.
Hmm.
It is using these other mediums and other portrayals of Rome in its own version of creating this, this mythical history. Because it's Rome is a
yeah.
difficult thing to discern. It's the truth was there, but then there's all the myth and all the legend of what was really happening at the time too. So
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it
I
was
did.
beautiful. And that the vast majority of the CGI looked pretty good. It wasn't like, like there's some Titanic shots where I'm like, whoa, boy,
No,
that's
yeah, yeah.
very CGI. But this one, I think it blended very nicely.
Yeah, I didn't catch any of like copy and pasted people in the crowd at the Coliseum or anything like that. For 2000, all very good. Hardly noticeable. I think probably because they didn't use it overtly or a whole lot. I did see a quote from Ridley Scott that said they wanted to create a Rome of the imagination, which is
Hmm.
maybe what inspired that rendition of like the Roman skyline, I guess you would call it, or the Roman city as we fly over it. Um, but the quote that quote was in relation to the fact that Ridley Scott actually went to the Coliseum, probably to do some preliminary scouting and stuff like that. He looked around and said, "It's too small. I'm gonna make it bigger,"
You know what?
which is
I
just funny
respect
to
that.
me. Yeah.
He- I am very susceptible to overly edited action sequences. I hate them.
Mm.
If the Born Identity movies look terrible and they had a markedly awful impact on things I like, that sort of fast editing I've never been a fan of. But I think here it's a little bit more tasteful, and I find myself liking these action sequences, frankly, more than I expected to. again after that first one, which I think is just yucky. When it's just like you smeared the entire frame. I don't like that at all. But what I think is nice about the action sequences later is I think they better communicate the sense of chaos of battle we were alluding to at the beginning, right? And they do give you time to watch things happen, like when that one woman gets cut in half by this, like the thing sticking out the side of the tire of the chariot, like it's her face and just her bottom torso, and then it cuts. Like it feels like the cuts are in a way to where you see the gore, but it's never gratuitous. I think this is a gratuitous film, and I think that there's
I mean,
there's
you
a
do
way
get to see a woman cut in half.
There is,
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Abram,
Yeah.
but there is like a point where I distinctly noticed that there's just a blood spray from nowhere and like the foreground. I'm like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, but there's a way that you cut these sequences where everybody's bleeding out and you're lingering on the sword, like being slammed through somebody's neck, and they're like blood choking out of their mouth and out of the back of their neck. Like the film doesn't do that, and I think that some of the editing like weaves this line of the film. The film could never pass for PG-13, but I don't think it reaches the excesses of what another version of Gladiator, frankly, if it had been made maybe now, would have reached, right? So I found the sequences to be tasteful. I also found them to be very exciting. The tiger sequence, I was saying out loud to myself, oh God, there's another tiger there. Because they do a great job of, like, damn, there's tigers on the floor everywhere. I was walking very carefully on my way to have lunch today. I'm like, where might the tigers be under the floor here?
Where's the trapdoors? Yeah.
Because I do think some of the filmmaking is quite inventive. When we cut to it, we see, like, we get like a Russell Crowe upskirt shot, and like, oh God, another tiger is coming out of the floor, right? I think that's really great. Or the way he yells in the chaos, and then we're putting the shields together to flip the chariot. These are good moments. I think there's such energy. And then when that energy kind of dissolves to that final fight against Javier Bardem, right? And they're squaring off, and the camera's still cutting, but it's a little bit slower. There's less frills there. It's just these two guys punching at each other, and you know in your heart that Russell Crowe's about to die, but he's taken Joaquin Phoenix down with him, right? I think they used the filmmaking is excessive for sure. 100% excessive. But I don't ever think it's 150% excessive. And I think when they scale it back to let you see certain things or let certain fights like that last one unfold a little bit of a less immediate fashion, it really works for me.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't have anything to say about, like, I think it's too excessive or things like that. I think
you're a prude. We know that. You don't like the violence.
But I am a prude, yes. And I gasped and covered my eyes whenever I saw a drop of blood in this film. I didn't watch most of it. But no, I think if we're winding down here, I think there's just I was hoping to discover why I couldn't just hop on board the Gladiator train, the Gladiator chariot, as it were, during this film. I was hoping to discover that in talking about it for a quest here, but I don't know. There's just something about this film that doesn't really click with me. I think it's the editing. I think it's maybe some lackluster stuff in the performances for me, in the script maybe. I just couldn't get on board with like 80 to 90% of this film, and quite frankly, I am sad about that. Like, this is one of the this is a very popular film. It's one of the films of all time, but unfortunately, this one's gonna go in the Tanner Dykstra, this film was overhyped for me pile.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
I know.
Did the Pirates of the Caribbean theme song work for you in this film?
It really surprised me. I'll tell you that much. That is the first note I have, because it's the battle theme for this movie, and it's just the da 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 da.
No, it's not that. It's not. It's another part of the theme song.
Oh, is it the part that goes da 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 da?
Yeah,
da 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 da. Yeah, that's what it is. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I've tried to look into it. So Hans Zimmer did the score for this film. I also need to do the Winton Noms. We'll get that in a second. Hans Zimmer did the score for this film. Apparently one of the best-selling film scores of all time for Gladiator. Interesting. It's good. And Hans Zimmer was a producer on 2003 Pirates of the Caribbean, but hired Klaus Bendelt, I think is how you, maybe, if I'm remembering the name correctly. So Hans Zimmer was a producer on Pirates of the Caribbean, but this Klaus guy wrote and composed the score. So I'm going to assume that Hans Zimmer like gave him permission to use that sort of that theme, that tune in it, but it's just very uncanny, growing up, obviously, kids are probably going to watch Pirates of the Caribbean before they watch Gladiator.
Yeah.
So that association is
Not
there,
me.
even though this film came first. Oh, that's true.
I
That's a
still
great
haven't
point,
seen any of
Tucker.
those movies. No, of course, I recognize the Pirates of the
Yeah,
Caribbean
yeah.
theme song.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's
Um,
weird, but I think it works.
yeah.
I like the score a lot.
Yeah, I think
It's good.
it's in the film a lot. The film is largely underscored, but I think that the mixing and everything works really well. I can always hear what was going on. I was just watching on my laptop and I just had the volume like cranked all the way. I just had it playing super loud, probably pissing off my neighbors, but who cares? That's the way you should watch a movie, is turned up all the way.
Yeah.
Here's what I will say, Tanner,
Oh.
you're gonna have to apologize for not doing the wins and noms earlier, because then I could have said, but you know what else I think is going to be underscored? Gladiator. Then we would have put in our numbers. It would have been a whole thing.
Well,
imagine that
Abram,
reality.
I apologize. I
Well,
apologize.
while Tanner is reading off the wins and noms, have a
Mhm.
score sheet, and we will roll right into it after we find out what the Academy thought of this film.
Yes. The Academy gave this film Best Picture, obviously. They also gave Russell Crowe the Best Leading Actor award, Old Rusty. This film won Best Costume Design, Best Sound, Best Visual Effects, and it was nominated for, Joaquin was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Ridley Scott was nominated for Best Director. It was also nominated in Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, and Best Score. And speaking of the Best Score, let's see who has it.
Oh, that was a good transition.
Yeah, that was good.
Everyone got it typed in?
I do have mine typed in.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I do, maybe I don't. You'll never know.
We'll find
We'll know
out
very soon.
in
know in a
3,
second.
2, 1, go. I'm waiting. Okay, there we
Oh,
go.
nice and balanced. Look at that.
Oh God.
It is a very
What?
balanced score. The average, Abram,
There are a lot of 7.8s.
There are.
disappointed. He already spoiled it. The film got a 7.8. The point breakdown, Abram gave it a 9.2, followed by my 7.7, then Tucker's 7.6, and finally Tanner's 6.8. So we've got a lot of 7.8s. Yeah, we do. Okay, running through the 3 of them that there are, it's The Artist, Grand Hotel, and Rebecca. Very different movies.
Boy.
Um,
Here's what I think we should do.
We're going to start the bidding?
We should let me speak first before we start the bidding.
Oh,
because there's something I want to
alright.
say. And I was gonna say this as a final thought, but now I gotta fight for the life of Gladiator. I have to be to be Gladiator's Gladiator here for a moment. This movie reminds me a lot of Titanic. And something that our commenters, I think particularly it was John Tor 11, said in his comment about Titanic, is he's like, you guys, like the villain sucks. The characters here are not very good. But I think we were so captured in Titanic with everything other than that, right? And I find myself, the deeper we get into Quest, the more times we reach a Titanic or a Sting or now one of these, a Gladiator, I come to think that sometimes the spectacle is what matters, and it's spectacle that gets your ass in that scene, right? There's a reason why you go to see these Marvel movies in theaters, not only because you want to know, you don't want to get spoiled and stuff, but because they operate purely as spectacle, right? And there's a real deep, genuine merit to spectacle, and there has been since Jaws. There especially has been since Jurassic Park. And to me, Gladiator is just really high fidelity, really well executed, and interesting spectacle. And to me, that counts for a whole hell of a lot. And that's why I think this film is an excellent movie. Although I totally grant what you guys are saying, these weaknesses about the characters of the script, but I'm not noticing them the same way I didn't notice them in Titanic, when I think that they are just as apparent there. So that would be my piece. I personally vote to put it above all of these, but that's not really how we do things. But that's my piece before we vote.
Okay, well, we should start at the bottom because that is how we do things. Does this film, who say aye or raise your hand if you do believe that this film should go above Rebecca? Okay, there's 3 people. Well, okay, so it's going above Rebecca. That's settled. Do you think it should go above Grand Hotel?
Nope.
I like Grand Hotel a lot.
Perfect. Yes, exactly where I wanted it.
All right.
Okay, then we figured it out. It is going to go in between Grand Hotel and Rebecca for the in between Grand Hotel and Rebecca. So it's going at the 42nd spot on the list.
Sure.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, why not? Okay,
Truly.
let's put on
Not a lot to say.
the Chariot of Spin and get those wheels turning. How about?
Oh, I see. Put those two spin wheels together, then you got yourself a chariot. Put some spikes on there. You can slice somebody in half.
Yeah,
Set
we
the shit on
were.
fire. Called Charity Fire.
All right.
You guys remember that movie?
I remember the
No.
score and nothing else.
Yeah, like
though.
Evangelist score.
Yeah. Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital? Is it on real? Wheel, what's your deal?
Wheels deal.
Where's my baby back ring song?
Yeah, you
No.
were gonna do that. Whatever.
That's it's already a dated reference. That song's from like the 90s, and it's a flash in the pan thing that people on Twitter will forget about tomorrow.
The number, which we
Okay,
won't
boys.
forget, is number 6. Tucker, what
Mhm.
movie is that?
Gosh, we're going to be watching the 1989 Best Picture winner, directed
Oh,
by Bruce Beresford, starring Dan Aykroyd, Jessica Chandy, and Morgan Freeman. We'll be watching Driving Miss Daisy.
well, hold on a second. Hang on a second, Tucker. Are you telling me? No,
I
back
might
up
be
a
telling
second.
you.
Clear the field. Are you telling me that Dan Aykroyd is in this picture?
He's in this picture. He absolutely is.
Holy.
I have seen this
Holy
film,
God.
and he plays Jessica Chandy's son.
Haven't we all seen this movie already and reviewed it? It's called Green Book.
It's called Green Book.
Oh, he got him.
Ooh, the low-hanging fruit joke about this movie. Or I guess Green Book. Yeah.
But speaking of,
Oh, Jesus.
great scores,
Yes, I love the score for Driving Miss Daisy.
The
Me too.
score
It's one
is
of my
like
favorites.
the only real thing I know about this movie. Like I know about the basic premise of like Morgan Freeman has to drive around.
It's a
Miss
Hans
Daisy.
Zimmer score, boys.
Oh, it is.
Really?
It is.
That
How
man is.
long has Hans been in the game?
Dude, this guy
baby?
is too prolific, man. He just makes.
He
He's
is.
too prolific.
I was looking at his filmography. It's kind of insane.
His
But also, this was
scoreography.
one of his
Early ones?
film songography. He started in 1984, so this is pretty early on in his
Oh,
career,
okay.
all things considered. But he also did the score for Rain Man, and I'm sure maybe at least another Best Picture, Gladiator. We just talking about
Yep.
Dune.
Oh, well, that didn't win Best Picture.
Dune should have won
play.
Best Picture.
12 Years a Slave.
Oh, hey. All right.
And Hillbilly Elegy. No, that didn't.
Oh, we got an alarm going off.
Someone's saying it's time. It's time to finish. Well, okay. So who's seen this movie and who's not? Because I haven't seen it.
I have not seen it.
Tucker
I haven't
has
seen the
seen
movie.
it. Abram, you have seen it.
As
No, I have
usual.
not.
Oh, okay.
As usual.
Well, we
But
will watch it.
We will. Yes.
And come back to you. I do believe, though, we're going on a little bit of a break for a couple weeks.
Yes.
Abram is going off on vacation, and I am sort of still currently on vacation and still doing quests. So we're going to take a little summer recess, not very long, just a little while. But
1 week.
1 week, we'll be back with more Quest for the Bestest. After our short break, we'll be back to talk about Driving Miss Daisy. We'll all hop in the car together and go for a ride.
Oh yeah.
And
Vroom.
and discuss the film. So thanks for talking about Gladiator. We did actually have to duke it out in the. I prophesized correctly. I didn't know that was going to happen at the beginning of the episode, that we were going to have to engage in mental combat, but we did, and we've all lived to tell the tale. So I thank God about that. Until next time, this has been fun. We'll see you then. Peace.